Good morning, Mr. Foster.
Hi, Dave. How are you doing?
I am doing great. I'm doing great. Welcome to the Attention Now podcast. We talk to successful business people, provide quality content, and just excited to have you on the show today. You're a legend with your Reebok brand. I remember wearing your gym shoes back in the 70s and 80s. They were like the most popular shoes ever, and remember the logo distinctly. One of the best logos I've ever seen. So honored to have you on here. Grateful to JT Fox for the introduction. And just wanted to find out a little bit about when you started the company and wanted to find out also what decade you had the biggest growth in.
What decade we had the biggest growth in? Well, I guess that was the 80s where we had our biggest growth.
The 80s. Okay.
The
Perfect.
80s when we when we found aerobics, when we found that nice white space called aerobics, and we were a nice running company until then, but we just pivoted into becoming a women's company.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
And how did you find that market? Well, how were you able to capture or get that niche in the market?
well, luckily, 2 or 3 years earlier, we'd made our entry into the American market as a running company. And down in Los Angeles, we had a tech rep, and it's called Arnold Martinez. And this is where aerobics started. Aerobics sort of started away there in Los Angeles. And Arnold's wife was going to these classes and coming back home with her friends, and they were just full of it. They were loving it. So Arnold said, Frankie, what are you doing? And she said, we're doing aerobics. Of course, nobody knew what aerobics was. So I said, okay, what's aerobics? And she said, well, we're actually exercising to music. Oh, right. So Arnold suggested he went down to the next class to see what all this was about, which he did. And he found the instructor wearing a pair of sneakers. Half the class, they were also wearing sneakers. The other half, no footwear at all. So I guess he had this vision, this light bulb moment when he thought, why don't we make a shoe specially for aerobics,
Okay.
especially for women? Make it in women's sizes on a woman's last, a nice white, soft glove leather upper, and a cushioned sole. And having had this thought, he's in Los Angeles. Our CEO for the American business was in Boston. So he took an overnight flight up to see Paul Feynman and suggest to him we get involved in aerobics. And Paul was not too receptive.
I can
Paul
imagine.
said, Paul said, come on, slow down, Arnold. We're a running company. Why do you want us to make shoes for girls dancing? Well, Arnold was a little upset at that, and he couldn't persuade Paul to get involved. Paul was saying, keep your eye on it. If it starts to grow, we'll take a look at it. So Arnold decided he would go around to the back door and have a word with Steve Liggett. Steve Liggett was our production man. He did a better job with Steve.
Okay.
He managed to persuade Steve to get him 200 pairs of samples. And when he got those, off down to LA with them, gave them to the instructors and some of the leading girls who were sort of well respected in this new aerobic scene. And all of a sudden, it took off. And then when Jane Fonda actually went out and bought a pair of Reebok aerobic shoes to use in her workouts, in her workout videos, that's when it exploded. And it took us from 9 million. We were a nice small running company doing $9 million. And in 4 years, we moved up to $900 million.
Wow.
That's what the women did for Reebok.
That's amazing. I'm glad you guys were able to pivot, make that change. Many companies would have been like really like, no, we're not getting out of that market. We're gonna, so that was
Right.
great. But were you on board with going to the aerobic market or no?
Was I,
On board? Did you agree with doing the aerobics back in the day?
to be honest, I didn't even know about it.
Okay. Oh wow. Okay. It was
I
all
was,
done on the back end.
yeah, I was in the UK, and I was now concentrating on global markets.
Okay.
So they snuck this one in under the radar, and well, it was an incredible decision that was made there for the brand. Pivoting away from running into aerobics, uh,
Wow.
and it gave us, not only did it give us $900 million, or almost from zero to a billion. It changed the face of the company,
That's
and we,
amazing.
yeah, and we overtook Adidas, we overtook Nike, and we became the number one sports brand. Of course, Adidas and Nike, they were well recognized as being male, team,
Okay.
sweaty.
Yeah.
We were a very small company. We hadn't really reached that level of being known throughout America as a brand. So
Got
when
it.
we to sort of to pivot to becoming a women's brand wasn't difficult. It was very difficult for Adidas and Nike to get into that brand and that product. So they stood back, and they thought, "No,
I'm not gonna
it'll
make it. Right.
it'll be a phase. It'll be over. It'll be nothing." And yeah, who
That,
are this Reebok company as well? But of course, they stood back for too long.
that's a great lesson learned in business to, not, take a look at the opportunities that are out there and capitalize on those. And so that's amazing. I know that I actually live in Chicago, land area. So I heard that there's a connection with Reebok in Chicago as well.
Oh, that's a big connection. Yes, that's how do you get into the American market, especially when we don't have computers and we don't have cell phones, we don't have the smartphones we have today. In fact, during my whole time with Reebok, I stepped back in 1990, beginning of 1990. We still didn't have computers.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So when we talk about how do we get there, how do we get to aerobics, communication, we didn't have satellites in those days. So communication, yes, by telephone, if you were lucky, if you could get a call in, because they use wires on the Atlantic, the transatlantic wires. So these were all phone calls by wire, but you had to book a call. So you couldn't just pick up a phone and dial it. You had to book it through the people at the exchange,
Okay.
and if you were lucky, you'd get a
Get
call.
through.
So getting into America, I had one chance every year, and that was the NSJ show in Chicago. So
Okay.
that was me for it wasn't in Chicago every year. It was in Chicago 3 years, and then they took it down to Houston for one
Okay.
year. I don't know why they took it to Houston for one year. Whether whether the McCormick Place, whether that was sort of booked up on everyone in 4 years by somebody else, I have no idea. But it was a welcome move because it was nice and warm down in Houston, whereas you're Chicago, you know what February in Chicago is like.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, what am I doing here? I still tell myself every day, which is crazy. But family's here, so that keeps me here. So obviously that's the reason. That's
Absolutely.
always
I,
stays. So.
I first went there in 1968.
Okay.
In February, beginning of February 1968. And we actually got into the American market in 1979,
Wow. Okay. All
11
right.
years. But
Wow.
as I say, when you think about it, you only get one chance a year. That's all you
Right.
get.
Correct.
Because if you live in America, you could move about quite easily. But we were over in Europe, in the UK. That was an expensive and a time-consuming flight. But we eventually got in there. But during those 11 years, I had six failures.
Oh
Six,
wow.
big failures. I had 6 different distributors. We tried it. We didn't make it. We had good product, but it's convincing the people that your product is a good product when there's plenty of product on the market.
Correct.
And we got in there because in 1979, I don't know if you've heard of Runner's World. Runner's World was
Yes,
a
yeah.
magazine.
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so during the 70s, all the time when I've been going to America, that magazine grew from being just a single page to a 70-page full color magazine because the running scene was growing. It just growing fast. In fact, that's how Nike really grew their business. They grew their business as a running company, and it was growing really fast. So by the end of by the end of 78 and into 79, Bob Anderson, who was the editor of the magazine, he was so influential in those days that he thought he could tell everybody which was the #1 shoe. And he did that for a couple of years. But the problem is, when you've got millions and millions of Americans out there running and somebody tells you this is the #1 shoe, what do you think happened?
Right. It's like, we don't agree with you. Right.
Well, they all wanted that shoe. All the
Right.
runners wanted the shoe,
Right.
which meant that Nike, instead of doing 500,000 pairs a month, suddenly they want 2 million pairs a month. And production you just couldn't get the production. So it failed on 2 years because he did Nike first. I think he did New Balance or maybe Atonic, maybe Saucony, I don't know, but it certainly wasn't Reebok. But
Okay.
on the third year, he was obviously getting a lot of stick for this because it wasn't working. So he changed it from saying this was the #1 shoe to star ratings. So 5-star shoe, you could get 4 or 5-star shoes. So it wouldn't just be one shoe that was at the top of the heap. It could be 4 or 5. And then 1979, our Aztec trainer or sneaker, our Aztec shoe, that got 5 stars.
Oh, wow.
We also got 5 stars for a racing shoe and 5 stars for a spike track shoe. So we
Okay.
got 3 5-star shoes. That gave us credibility. That gave us credentials. So all of a sudden, from not being able to get into that market, all of a sudden, America
You're at
wanted
the
it.
top, right?
Yeah,
You're at the top. Yeah.
yes,
And that's
America wanted us, and that's when we got into the market, and we started doing nicely as a running company. So
that's
that was
amazing.
good. But
Yeah,
like we said,
I
a
remember
robot.
being in school that your shoe, everyone had your shoe, including myself. I had a couple pairs, and it was great. I had a quick question. I think we're down to 2 minutes. Did the Reebok brand or logo always have Union Jack on it? Because I saw a debate online. It's like,
Well, that's interesting because we had the Star Crest,
okay,
and the Star Crest, which is a logo you see on the tongue now, still see that on the tongue. But Paul Fireman, he said, Joe, this Star Crest, it looks a lot like the Union Jack. Why don't we use the Union Jack? Would it be okay if we did that? And I said, okay, we can use the Union Jack, but we will get killed in the UK. They'll because the shoes being made in Korea, we put the Union Jack on, they will kill us in the UK. And we did get a lot of problems with that. But you don't look at it as a problem. All of a sudden, your brand is being seen a lot because people are talking about it. Why have we got this Union Jack on these shoes? Um, but the beautiful thing about the Union Jack is that apart from having one on each shoe, the lid of the box was also a Union Jack. But I did ask Paul, I said, why the Union Jack? What's so different from what we have? Well, he said, the Starcrest will cost us millions to get people to do it. He said, but everybody in America knows the Union Jack.
very
So
good. Perfect.
that is it. Yeah.
So just wanted to ask you, what would you like people listening today to know or remember about you or your business?
Well, I'd like them to think that the Reebok story is a great story. I think we got to the point where 60% of all Americans had bought a pair of Reebok the 80s. That's right. So I like people to think fondly of the fact that it's Reebok. It was a good brand in those days. Is now coming back because we're now with ABG, and ABG are giving Reebok much more visibility now. And Shaq O'Neal, Shaq is the one who's promoting the brand and bringing it back into basketball. So I'd like people to think fondly of we're here to stay.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mr. Foster. It's a pleasure to meet you. I want to encourage everybody to look up Joe Foster's book, and I think he's coming out with a new one as well.
We're doing a new one, yes. Survive and Thrive is our new one, which is 20 different stories of people who have really survived something pretty difficult and are now thriving as businessmen.
That's incredible. Looking forward to reading that. Follow Joe on Instagram. I follow him as well. And looking forward to maybe talking to you again in the future, Mr. Foster. Been a pleasure.
It's a pleasure for me, Dave. And I look forward to meeting.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.